There comes a moment in every life when you must stop asking why someone hurt you and start asking why you keep handing them the knife. Because sometimes the wound is not the deepest thing that happened. Sometimes the deeper tragedy is what you do afterward. You explain their behavior. You excuse the silence. You soften the cruelty. You tell yourself they were angry, they were afraid, they were going through something. They did not mean it. And perhaps they did not. Perhaps they did. But your heart does not need a courtroom to prove that it was wounded. You remember, your body remembers what your mind keeps trying to negotiate away. And this is where wisdom begins. Not in hatred, not in revenge, not in becoming cold, but in becoming honest. Someone who has hurt you once has shown you something. Maybe it was a moment of weakness. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was a pattern waiting for permission to become permanent. You do not have to decide their entire character from one painful moment. But you must not pretend the moment never happened. Because trust is precious. Trust is not a door you leave unlocked simply because somebody says they are sorry. Trust is a house rebuilt brick by brick, action by action, truth by truth. And you have every right to stand at the door. You have every right to say, not yet. You have every right to watch, because forgiveness may free your heart. But boundaries protect your future. There are people who will call your boundaries bitterness because they benefited from your lack of them. There are people who will tell you that you have changed because you no longer tolerate what you once endured. Let them talk. You were not placed on this earth to remain accessible to everyone who knows how to find your weakness. You are allowed to become difficult to hurt. You are allowed to remember. You are allowed to walk away. And perhaps the most powerful thing you will ever learn is this. You do not have to hate someone to stop trusting them. Sometimes you simply become wise enough to believe what their actions have already told you. And when you finally understand that, you stop chasing explanations and start choosing yourself. Pain has a language of its own, and sometimes it speaks more honestly than words ever could. When someone hurts you, your first instinct may be to dismiss it, especially when that person matters to you. You may tell yourself that everyone makes mistakes, that people lose their temper, that circumstances were difficult, that they did not really mean what they said or did. You search for explanations because accepting the truth can be painful. But pain is not always something you are supposed to silence. Sometimes pain is information. Sometimes it is the message your heart has been trying to deliver while your mind keeps making excuses. When someone deliberately humiliates you, betrays you, manipulates you, lies to you, or repeatedly ignores your boundaries, their behavior is telling you something. It is revealing what they are willing to do when they believe they can get away with it. It does not mean that one mistake defines an entire human being. People can change. People can regret what they have done. People can become better. But you should never become so desperate to preserve a relationship that you ignore what the relationship has already revealed. Pain teaches you where your boundaries were crossed. It teaches you what you will no longer accept. It teaches you the difference between someone who makes a mistake and someone who creates excuses for making the same mistake again. The lesson is not to become suspicious of everyone. The lesson is to become observant. There is wisdom in watching what people do after they hurt you. Do they take responsibility, or do they blame you? Do they apologize sincerely, or do they apologize only when they fear losing access to you? Do they change their behavior, or do they simply become better at explaining it? These questions matter because words can decorate almost anything, but behavior eventually tells the truth. You do not have to turn your pain into hatred. You do not have to become cruel because someone was cruel to you. You do not have to spend your life carrying resentment like a heavy suitcase from one relationship to another. You can forgive and still remember. You can understand someone and still decide that they are not safe for your heart. You can wish them peace while choosing distance. The greatest mistake is not being hurt. The greatest mistake is learning nothing from the wound. A painful experience can become a teacher if you allow yourself to listen. It can teach you to recognize disrespect sooner. It can teach you that love without respect is not enough. It can teach you that loyalty should never require self-abandonment. It can teach you that your kindness deserves boundaries and that your heart deserves protection. So when someone hurts you, do not immediately ask, how can I make them stay? Ask yourself, what is this experience teaching me? Perhaps it is teaching you to stop ignoring red flags. Perhaps it is teaching you to trust your instincts. Perhaps it is teaching you that peace is more valuable than familiarity. Your pain is not proof that you are weak. Sometimes it is the evidence that you have finally discovered what you deserve. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as an invitation. People sometimes believe that if you forgive someone, you must welcome them back, trust them again, and give them the same place in your life that they once occupied. But forgiveness and access are not the same thing. You can release the anger that is consuming you without reopening the door that caused you pain. You can put down the weight without picking the person back up. There are wounds that teach you something about other people, but there are also wounds that teach you something about yourself. They teach you that your peace matters. They teach you that love does not require unlimited chances. They teach you that being compassionate does not mean becoming available to repeated harm. Forgiveness can be an act of freedom, but boundaries can be an act of wisdom. Sometimes you forgive because you are tired of carrying the memory. You forgive because you no longer want someone else's actions controlling your emotions. You forgive because you refuse to let bitterness become a permanent resident inside you. But forgiveness does not erase history. It does not transform betrayal into loyalty or cruelty into kindness. It simply means you choose not to spend the rest of your life chained to what happened. You can say, I understand why you did what you did, without saying, you can do it again. You can recognize someone's pain without volunteering to become the place where they unload it. You can believe that a person deserves the opportunity to change without making yourself responsible for witnessing that change from the front row. This distinction becomes especially important when someone has hurt you more than once. If every apology is followed by the same behavior, then the apology has become a doorway to repetition. You do not have to keep standing in that doorway. Your heart is not a public building. Not everyone who knocks deserves immediate entry. Some people may accuse you of holding a grudge when you choose distance. But distance is not always punishment. Sometimes distance is protection. Sometimes silence is not hatred. It is healing. Sometimes walking away is not revenge. It is the first honest act of self-respect you have given yourself in years. Forgiveness should make you lighter, not more vulnerable to the same wound. It should release you from obsession, not return you to the situation that broke you. You are allowed to forgive someone privately and never speak to them again. You are allowed to wish them well from far away. You are allowed to remember what happened while refusing to let it define the person you become. The world may teach you that forgiveness means forgetting, but wisdom knows better. Remembering can protect you. Boundaries can protect you. Discernment can protect you. You do not need hatred to maintain any of them. So forgive when forgiveness brings peace. Release what you can. Stop rehearsing the betrayal in your mind and choose peace over another wound. Trust is not rebuilt because someone says the right words at the right moment. Trust is rebuilt slowly, quietly, through behavior that remains consistent when nobody is watching. Anyone can promise to change when they are afraid of losing you. Anyone can cry, apologize, make declarations, and swear that things will never happen again. But words are easy when the consequences of losing someone become real. What matters is what happens after the apology, when the emotion fades and everyday life begins again. If someone has hurt you, you do not have to decide immediately whether to trust them again. You are allowed to observe. You are allowed to take your time. You are allowed to let their actions answer the questions their words cannot. Real change does not demand instant forgiveness. Real change understands that trust was damaged and that rebuilding it will require patience. A person who truly regrets hurting you will not constantly pressure you to get over it. They will understand why you are cautious. They will not become angry because you need reassurance. They will not accuse you of being difficult simply because you remember what happened. Instead, they will allow their behavior to speak. Look for consistency. If someone promises to respect your boundaries, watch whether they actually respect them. If they promise honesty, watch whether their truth remains intact when the truth becomes inconvenient. If they promise to stop manipulating you, notice whether they take responsibility when confronted. If they claim to value you, notice whether their actions make you feel valued when there is nothing to gain. This is how you learn the difference between remorse and performance. Remorse says, I hurt you, and I understand why you no longer feel safe with me. Performance says, I apologized, so why are you still upset? Remorse accepts responsibility. Performance searches for excuses. Remorse creates patience. Performance demands immediate access. And sometimes the hardest truth is that a person may sincerely regret what they did and still not be capable of becoming the person you need them to be. Their apology can be genuine, yet your decision to remain distant can also be genuine. Both things can exist at the same time. You do not have to punish someone forever for their mistakes, but you also do not have to volunteer your heart as evidence of their transformation. Let them prove themselves through time. Let consistency become the language of their apology. Trust should not be rebuilt in a single conversation. It should be rebuilt through hundreds of small moments, keeping promises, telling the truth, respecting boundaries, showing up when they say they will, listening without becoming defensive, and choosing kindness even when they are frustrated. And remember, trust is not simply believing that someone will never hurt you again. Trust is knowing that if something goes wrong, they will have the character to handle it with honesty, responsibility, and respect. So do not be hypnotized by beautiful apologies. Listen to them if you must, but watch what follows. Watch the pattern. Watch the effort. Watch the consistency. Because when someone has truly changed, you will not have to spend every day convincing yourself that they have. Protecting your peace does not make you selfish. It does not make you heartless, arrogant, or cruel. Sometimes people will make you feel guilty for creating distance, especially when they were comfortable having unlimited access to your time, attention, kindness, and forgiveness. But you must understand that your peace is not something you owe to anyone. It is something you are responsible for protecting. There comes a time when you realize that constantly explaining yourself is exhausting. Constantly defending your boundaries is exhausting. Constantly wondering whether someone will respect you today or hurt you tomorrow can turn even the strongest heart into a tired one. You begin living in anticipation instead of living in peace. You become more concerned with preventing another person's anger than protecting your own well-being. That is not peace. Peace is being able to breathe without wondering what emotional storm is coming next. Peace is being able to speak honestly without fearing punishment. Peace is knowing that you do not have to shrink yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Peace is understanding that you can love people without allowing them to have unlimited access to you. Boundaries are how you communicate that understanding. A boundary is not a weapon. It is not designed to control another person. You cannot force someone to behave differently simply by creating a boundary. What you can control is what you will do when their behavior crosses that boundary. You can step away. You can end the conversation. You can reduce contact. You can refuse to participate in disrespect, and you do not have to apologize for doing so. There will always be people who misunderstand your boundaries. They may say you have changed. They may accuse you of thinking you are better than them. They may remind you of everything they have done for you. They may even attempt to make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. But sometimes becoming healthier looks like becoming less available to unhealthy behavior. You are not required to keep answering every call. You are not required to explain every decision. You are not required to remain close to someone simply because you once loved them deeply. History does not create a permanent obligation to tolerate harm. Protecting your peace also means learning to recognize when an argument is no longer productive. Not every accusation needs a response. Not every misunderstanding needs a 10-page explanation. Not every person deserves access to your deepest thoughts. Sometimes the most powerful response is quiet distance. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop sacrificing yourself to prove that you care. There is a difference between being kind and being endlessly available. There is a difference between forgiveness and permission. There is a difference between compassion and self-abandonment. You can have a generous heart and still have a locked door. You can wish someone healing and still choose not to walk beside them. You can love someone from a distance when closeness has become destructive. Your peace deserves protection because once you understand its value, you realize how expensive it was to keep giving it away. You begin choosing relationships where respect does not have to be begged for, honesty does not have to be demanded, and safety does not have to be negotiated. And when you finally stop feeling guilty for protecting yourself, you discover that boundaries were never about pushing good people away. They were about making sure you no longer abandon yourself just to keep someone else close. Self-respect begins when you stop confusing familiarity with love. Sometimes we remain connected to people simply because they have been part of our lives for so long. We know their voice, their habits, their stories, their strengths, and their weaknesses. We remember the good moments, and those memories can become powerful enough to make us tolerate the bad ones. We tell ourselves that because we have invested so much time, we must continue investing more. But history is not always a reason to stay. Sometimes history is simply evidence of how long you have been trying. Choosing yourself does not mean believing you are better than someone else. It means recognizing that your emotional well-being has value. It means understanding that love should never require you to repeatedly betray your own dignity. You can care deeply about someone and still admit that the relationship is no longer healthy for you. You can remember beautiful moments without allowing those moments to erase painful realities. There is a dangerous habit of returning to what is familiar simply because the unknown feels frightening. You may know that someone has hurt you, yet leaving feels harder because at least you understand the world you are leaving behind. The familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar peace. But safety is not measured by familiarity. Sometimes the thing you know best is the very thing preventing you from discovering how peaceful your life could become. Self-respect asks you to consider a different question. Instead of asking, how much do I love this person? Ask, what is this relationship teaching me about how I should allow myself to be treated? If the answer is teaching you to accept disrespect, constantly question your worth, silence your needs, or live in fear of another betrayal, then love alone cannot solve the problem. You deserve relationships where you do not have to beg for basic consideration. You deserve people who can disagree with you without destroying you. You deserve honesty that does not arrive only after you discover the truth yourself. You deserve apologies followed by changed behavior. Most importantly, you deserve to feel like yourself around the people you love. Choosing self-respect sometimes means walking away before you feel ready. It means accepting that closure may not come from the person who hurt you. You may never receive the perfect explanation. You may never hear the apology you deserved. You may never understand why someone chose to treat you badly. But you can still close the door. You can stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to move forward. Do not measure your worth by someone's inability to recognize it. A person's rejection, betrayal, disrespect, or abandonment does not determine your value. It reveals something about their choices, not your worth. There will be moments when loneliness tries to convince you that returning is easier. There will be nights when memories make you question your decision. In those moments, remember why you chose yourself. Remember the peace you were trying to protect. Remember the version of you who was tired of making excuses for behavior that kept breaking your heart. Walking away does not mean you lost. Sometimes walking away is the moment you finally win yourself back. And when you choose self-respect over familiarity, you begin building a life where your heart is not simply loved, but protected, respected, and free.